From the shelter-in-place studio of Leslie Jackson, welcome to this audio-only episode of The Leslie Show, featuring jazz flutist Rebecca Kleinmann. Here she joins me from her studio in Oakland, and we talk about her music education, picking out crucial moments that made her the shredder she is today. I'm fascinated by how musicians in particular grow into the artists that they are, down to the seemingly random teachers that they had as kids. Falling asleep while your dad plays piano is one of my own personal experiences, and this conversation really hits home for me. Please enjoy my conversation with the shredder extraordinaire, audio-only episode with Rebecca Kleinmann. I have you in my mind as a Brazilian flute player. That's only telling like a 16th of the story. But would you say you're a jazz flutist?
Yes, I would, yeah.
How did you come to how you're playing now?
I had kind of this pretty diverse musical experience growing up. And on the one hand, my dad is a classical pianist and has a degree in composition. He is a beautiful musician, but he's not a performer. And so actually I grew up hearing him play Chopin after everybody went to sleep. He didn't even like one person listening to him. It made him nervous. Like my bedroom was like above the room where his piano was. So I heard all the Chopin. So I think I had that sort of subconscious classical music influence that I really loved. And it's also like really comforting to me in this sort of basic way. I studied violin when I was 3, and then I studied piano when I was 6, and then I started flute when I was 11. But at the same point, I was improvising because I started going to this church, and it's in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, that's part of where I grew up. And there was no sheet music. Usually in the South, you have churches that are either all white or all black. But this church was really integrated. And the music was also integrated. It was my first exposure to all these beautiful spirituals and just gorgeous music. And there's a choir that was just so full of life. Actually, I can't remember how I started improvising. So years later, as an adult, I went back to the pianist and I said, did you ever tell me to improvise? Like, how did I start? I cannot remember. Because I was 13 when I started going to this place. And he said, well, I never told you, but I suggested it musically.
Oh, no, I love this. And you're open. You're so open when you're that age.
Yeah.
And you must have just loved music and trusted that piano player to guide you musically.
His name's Thomas Moore. He's still a friend, family friend.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love this because one of the things I really enjoy about your music is your skill at improvisation. I feel like you're also experiencing what's going on for the first time too. Sometimes improvisations feel rehearsed. Yours feel like you're just hungry for it. And that's maybe grounded in that tradition of playing devotional music with your heart wide open in good hands and maybe being a natural, I don't know, and a hell of a lot of practice, which we'll get into. Then what?
So I had this wonderful flute teacher, Jennifer Dior. She was a piccolo player still is actually, with the Charlotte Symphony. I wanted to audition for the Charlotte Youth Symphony. A bunch of my friends were in it, and I was really excited about it. And the first year that I wanted to audition for it, she said, "You're not ready." And I was so mad. I was so mad because they only did auditions once a year. And I was like, no, I want to audition. I want to be in it. And she said, you're not ready to audition. And so in retaliation, I practiced my butt off for a full year and I made it in the next year. And I was just so mad that she even thought that she could tell me I could not audition. But I had to follow her guidance because she was my flute teacher. But I think that really motivated me. Also, there was another thing that motivated me. There was this wonderful flute player. Her name was Nancy McCaskill. So Nancy was the first flute chair in my high school band and my high school orchestra. And I was second. She was first flute chair in the Charlotte Youth Symphony. And I was always working my butt off to try to beat her up till the double North Carolina, South Carolina State Orchestra. It was her and me. We're in the same high school. So you imagine, like, if you're second flute in the double state orchestra, you're probably first flute chair in your high school. But I was always second. And I don't remember what it was, but there was one of these competitions that I beat her, and I was like, yeah. But looking back, I'm super grateful to her because she, it was sort of this healthy competitive spirit.
Absolutely.
But, I was always just having to like bust my butt to like keep up with her. She's so good, and she was always there.
Kind of tailor-made.
So then I decided to go to school for music. I went to Indiana University School of Music. I didn't really know anything about jazz at that point. Little did I know that they have one of the best jazz programs in the world. And also they were the first, because the guy who started the program there actually invented the idea of having jazz in universities. His name's David Baker. One of the skills that I learned during that time, because there was no flute parts or barely any flute parts, I had to, in order for them to let me in the jazz bands, I had to transpose everything by sight. And sometimes it was a trumpet part from B flat, and sometimes it was an alto saxophone part from E flat. And it was really hard at first. And at first I was writing everything out, but there was so much music, I had to learn how to transpose by sight.
You're killing me.
So that skill that I learned in there, that was like kind of grueling and nerve-wracking at the time, has really served me, because I feel like I can look at something and transpose it, or just by ear also transpose. So
what a gift.
It was really difficult, but I'm super glad that I went through that.
Right. Did you find yourself kind of relying on your good ear to get you through things?
I mean,
sometimes?
They were really chromatic and weird, and sometimes you had to inner part. So no, I had to be precise. I had to really learn.
No cheating.
No. And the ear training and the music history and all that at that school was really intense.
And that wasn't the end of it.
No. So sometimes I was in the jazz band, but sometimes I was in this other ensemble called the Latin American Music Ensemble. That is actually where I learned my first choro. There was a guitarist there from Brazil, Marcos Cavalcanti, is a friend of mine, who introduced me to some choros. And I was like, oh, this is fun. So fun for flute, And I ended up arranging some, performing a bunch.
What is it about them? They're so intriguing. They're so... Well, you tell me.
It's just beautiful. I don't know. I just love the groove, and I love those tunes, and somehow they just felt natural to me for whatever weird reason.
I love choro because the tunes are so fun and positive, but they're so effing badass and hard. I love how it's kind of a combination of jazz and classical. It's happy dance music, so emotionally deep.
Choro came about the same time that ragtime came about in the States. So if you can imagine, it's just the flip side of that. It's the same group of influences as you find in ragtime. You have the European classical music meeting African rhythms, and the forms meeting sort of the aesthetic and mixing all together. So the same exact thing happened in Brazil in that same time period. We're talking about like 1890s on, where you have harmonies of Chopin with African and indigenous rhythms. And so they're kind of combining in certain ways, and the cultural events that were happening at the time.
Did you go and get a PhD? Did you go travel? What happened after?
At some point, David Baker, who is like this icon of jazz education, I asked him at some point if I could just change my major to jazz. And he was like, well, we don't have a jazz flute degree, so I'm gonna have to make one for you. Yeah, so I ended up, my degree is a Bachelor of Science in Jazz Flute Performance with an outside field in Spanish.
Did you go on? Did you pursue an advanced degree?
Just on the streets.
Or did you run for your life?
I did. Actually, the day after my senior recital, I got in my car and I drove to California.
What did you do when you got to California?
I came out here to visit a friend. In that 1 week that I was there, actually, I showed up on a Monday, and she took me to a jazz jam, and all the best players from Santa Barbara happened to be there that night.
I love this phase of life where, are you like in your early 20s?
Let's see. Yeah, I was about 21 or 22 probably.
And you're just so enthusiastic that the world is just your oyster. Like the doors are just opening. I just showed up to this session and then the doors just started opening because you're young and you're open and this like life is just so rich. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So you're getting kind of embroiled in to Santa Barbara and that music scene.
So I was there for a week. I had a great week, and I said, okay, I'm going to come back for 2 months and study with Jill. I'm going to study like crazy, and then I'm going to, go on with my life. And in those 2 months, I started studying with her deeply, and it went really well, and I started getting all this work. And I also started going to LA a bunch and checking out.
Oh, right. It's a nice proximity to LA,
Yes,
right?
An hour and a half. That was my deal with myself. It's like, okay, you can be here, but you have to just keep going to LA. Don't be scared of the drive.
Right. Don't get in a rut.
Yeah, I kind of wanted that more edgy city vibe in my playing. But Jill was such a great teacher, and I started getting all this work and students of my own and teaching gigs. And then my boyfriend back in Indiana broke up with me over the phone. I went into my lesson crying. I was like, blah, blah, blah. And she said, you're doing so well here. Why don't you just move to California? And then I started driving across the country with my friend and also for one of my friends from the Irish music scene there. And we were driving across country, going through all these beautiful parks, and we got to Rocky Mountain National Park. We go through the gate, and the guy was kind of in a bad mood. And she's like, that's really odd. Usually there's such a good mood. And we get up to this vista, and we're like, oh, finally we're here. Like, this is beautiful. And somebody walked up to us there, like, good thing they didn't blow this up yet. And that was September 11th. Okay, what am I going to do? I can't give blood. I can't do anything. Like, they don't need that. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to put together a benefit concert. So at least I could do that. So I had met some musicians in those couple of months, and I went and found a venue, and I ended up raising like $5,000 for the Red Cross. And
Lovely.
Then the next day I was like, I need a job. So I'm literally walking around town. I got like a collared shirt and had my resume and running around town with it in my hand. And I ran into the guy who ran the concert hall. And he said, hey, I saw how you ran that concert. And I was wondering, I need an assistant director for the concert hall. Would you like to be in? I was like, sure. You want my resume? He's like, no, that's okay. So I got to be the assistant director at this concert hall. It's called Victoria Hall. And they did other things too, did gatherings and whatnot, and lectures. And that was my practice room too. So I got this beautiful acoustic for my practice room.
That's so cool. I love this story. This you and I would not have had time to cover standing around after one of your shows. But it did not stop there.
No, that was, so I lived there, and then I moved to San Diego for 1 year. Moved to the Bay Area, and I was like, okay, Rebecca, you get 3 years in the Bay Area, and then you're moving to New York. Yeah, now I've been here for 10 or 11 years. That was 10 or 11 years ago.
The Bay Area is really sticky.
Almost immediately when I moved to the Bay Area, I started getting all this work. I taught at Zambaleta, which Mina ran.
Yeah.
And I taught a shoto class there and a flute workshop. And there was one lady who's taking both of those classes, and she led me to the school teaching gig, which they trained me, and I ended up teaching music to kids in schools. And I've been doing that a lot for the last 10 years.
That's what you were doing when I met you.
Yeah. So I'm still doing that. But usually I've been teaching like somewhere between 800 to 1,000 kids per school year, and several different jobs.
Wow. That feels to me like such a generous proposition when you're such a serious musician. You're composing, you're performing, you're working in bands, but you've got these little brats that you've got to go deal with, is the way I see it. But they really can also, you tell me, it seems like they kind of feed your enthusiasm, they feed your love for music. You must get something out of it.
I do. I love teaching. I feel like it's part of my life. It's part of my balance. Because I love teaching the littlest kids because, they don't know what's hard. They don't know what's difficult, They don't, you can't,
sure.
You sing them a song and, ask them to sing along. They're just going to figure out how to do it. They're little sponges. They just kind of adapt to it. And learn. So I just love seeing that and giving them this foundation of singing in tune and learning to read rhythms and everything and be excited about it. I feel like that's my main purpose when I'm teaching kids, is just to give them an enthusiasm, inspire them and give them enthusiasm towards music, because that can carry them wherever they want to go, whether it's with music or if it's just like a feeling about life, So for me, that's really powerful to teach at that, real core level.
And it has the foundation of your love for music is how supported you were in it. You started at age 3.
Yeah.
And it continued to kind of blossom for you, obviously. And it's those early years, it seems to me. You talk to people who, unfortunately, took that trumpet band class at age 12, and the teacher said, "You'll never be a trumpet player." You hear those stories, and they're so heartbreaking. Whereas when, like you're supported as a kid, in music, it can really blossom, especially if you've got a gift for it, as you clearly do.
Thanks.
Feel like turning out a little tune or something?
Let's see what happens. Just a little improvisation.
About the moment, it's almost you were listening to it for the first time. Can you talk about what's happening when you improvise? Like, what happens? Are you just hearing it? Does it come down out of the sky?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just playing. I'm just and literally playing, like the word play, just kind of hearing what I just did and interacting with it and going somewhere else.
Exploring.
And just also expressing whatever I feel in the moment, I heard a little bit of flamenco stuff come out because I was just working on a flamenco piece. So
cool.
I heard, I think that kind of worked its way in somehow.
I think so too.
I think I heard a little blue bossa come out.
Well, Rebecca, I really love your dedication to music. I love now that I know it, I love the arc of your career, and it makes so much sense that you should be where you are in music. I've seen you play kind of alternative rock and roll, almost like prog rock with Rosie. I've seen you play Brazilian jazz. I've seen you play the blues with Tiffany Austin, and that was a kick-ass show at the piano store.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you have a broad spectrum of music, but you have a singular focus too, and that's music itself and flute playing. Really admire that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Is there anything that you wish to promote or wish I had asked before we sign off?
Well, my school teaching went from teaching 22 classes a week last year and kept teaching it online last spring, but now this fall it's 3. So I'm actually taking a few. I had a waiting list, and I'm taking just a few more flute students. So, and I also teach vocals and piano, beginning piano. I'm taking a few select students.
Okay.
Dedicated.
And how
students.
do we reach you?
Probably probably best my email, which is RebeccaKleinmann@gmail.com. So
Okay, and I'll point out there's 2 N's at the end of Kleinman.
yes, and my website is RebeccaKleinmann.com.
If you want to just hear a great sort of sample of Rebecca's music, just let that website play.
I guess one thing that I wanted to just mention is that I do go to Brazil every year, and but usually I go every year, like around December, to this Choro Jazz Festival, and I've been 8 times now, 5 in a row. I love Brazil, and I have this really beautiful connection with people there in certain cities.
No doubt.
Belo Horizonte, Ceará, Rio, São Paulo, and so I'm just missing that right now. But
well, may you go back soon.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's soul food, and they love you. They treasure you when you show up. They're excited to see you. You're part of a family there.
Yeah, I've got a lot of great friends there.
Yeah.
So I'm missing them, but I get to connect with them online, like I'm connecting with you now. So
okay, keep us posted to what you're up to, Rebecca.
I will.
And great, many blessings, Rebecca. So good to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Leslie.
We'll see you soon. You've been listening to an interview with Rebecca Kleinmann. This episode was edited and produced by Leslie Jackson. Intro and outro music is a song by Rebecca called Crow's Dance. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Coming up, it's Bay Area drummer Peter Libby. Thanks for listening. listening to The Leslie Show.